Cheers, guys. Epix 911, welcome to the Saturday, July 29th, 2017 edition of VR News. Let's dive right into the VR News flip side, starting with this first story, Capcom updating their unit sales stats for their Resident Evil 7 Biohazard game. So they've updated those stats to 3.7 million units sold. When we last looked at the PlayStation VR player percentage from that, we had a figure of about 9.4%. That has now grown to 11%. So the best guess for PlayStation VR player base is at about 405,000 players. If that's correct, it would easily be the largest player base and goes to show that the right game can absolutely have a positive impact even within a small install base. And then NextVR, best known for VR live broadcasting, sports, and music concert events. Well, they're now doing something a little bit different. It's a project they're calling Paranormal Evidence, and they describe it as virtual reality investigation exploring the unexplained phenomena reported as notoriously haunted locations. First episode is going to launch August 1st, and it focuses on the decrepit halls of what else? Insane asylum called Penhurst Asylum. Their aim is to capture evidence of hauntings as they happen. There's a complete team of investigators led by Jack Kasowitz and the NextVR engineering team using all of their VR live capture expertise. They are building what they are calling a proprietary camera system to capture full spectrum footage in the pitch dark environment, enabling the audience to see things imperceptible by even the investigators. And the rest, I suppose, is up to you and me if we believe it all in the first place. And in our next story, PALMER Luckey, in what can best be described as flipping the bird or the V, a big massive FU to Facebook's Oculus the other week with his backing of Revive. Well, this would be more like an artillery shot fired in their direction. So he posed a question today, a question with a poll attached on his Twitter account asking, should I try to save at AltSpaceVR with a caveat in parentheses, may not be possible. And for me, there's a few ways of looking at this. Obviously, the first, out of the kindness of his heart, etc. The second, that it appears to be a bit of an ego play. The next way, and this one a bit more serious, it toys with the emotions of not just fans of the product by possibly giving them false hope, but also the employees who, up to just a few days ago, had their world turned upside down because they are no longer employed. And then I suppose the last way of looking at it is as a lifeline to a company and product that we have to remember could not survive on its own merits despite having a year to find alternate revenue streams, could not, did not, end result is the same, end game. Well, AltSpaceVR co-founder Cymatic, aka Bruce Wooden, responded to Palmer's tweet asking him to get in touch if he'd like to talk. For me, guys, as much as I hate people losing their jobs, companies going under like this, the whole scenario of a benevolent benefactor swooping in single-handedly, saving the company, alas, is actually pretty rare. Most fail, and they fail for a simple reason. All the brains involved the first go-around couldn't make it work. Sure, there's exceptions, but a long time, or most of the time rather, it just delays the inevitable. Kind of like the difference between ripping a Band-Aid off quickly or slowly. The end result's the same. How you get there, slightly different. And this next story, in probably what has been one of the longest teases in the virtual reality industry, is the whole question of an open standard and these companies going open. And Oculus, for their part, they've probably prolonged that tease the absolute longest. And I say that because they've always had the "it just works" philosophy to kind of hide behind. Now, in the interim, until this open standard, they and others in the VR industry have been throwing their support behind OpenVR. To me, that's kind of like having a table filled with different representatives for different bands of highwaymen. You know, the people who rob, kind of like toll collectors, except they do it illegally, and having them decide how to split up their little empire and hand it off to somebody where they won't see any cash flow anymore. It's hard to believe it's going to work out the way we want it to work out. While I love my Rift, guys, I've been a proponent for a more open system pretty much since day one. And I use that analogy, and I know it's not perfect, but I compare it to graphic cards. Each graphic card is going to have slightly different drivers. They're going to approach a game slightly differently. But at the end of the day, the damn game works with whichever GPU-based graphic card you want to purchase. And I'm hoping that at some point, that is what VR's open standard is like, or at least something resembling that. What do you guys think? And this last story, guys, I mentioned back on July 22nd that OrbusVR was going to have an upcoming free open alpha. Well, that's here now. So the game is playable via both Rift or Vive. Developers have even put together a first-time player's guide. I'll have that via a link in the description below. And it goes into the whole thing about the game and explains the process of joining the open alpha. Via a blog post, the devs have said that in the current open alpha state, there's about 20 hours of content. You've got 4 different combat classes, 2 5-player PvE dungeons, a free-for-all PvP arena, and 3 zones where you can grind, do quests, etc. A level cap of level 12. Also, I've talked in the past about the fishing and alchemy disciplines. That's there. They've even thrown in a world boss, which, like any world boss in any MMO, is going to require cooperation from a large group of max level players. Game is $30 during the pre-order period. It's going to increase to $40 US after it goes into closed beta, which takes place August 18th. Both 180-degree and 360-degree play are supported in the game, and they've got a full release of the title slated for the 4th quarter, so sometime between October and December. For me, my MMO days most likely behind me. My problem is I've played quite a few, but I get way too into them. You could use the word addiction. I prefer to think of it as just hardcore. I want to do the raids. I want to get the best gear. And sadly, that requires you putting in a lot of hours, usually, doesn't matter the MMO, in playing the end game. And I haven't played one yet where the time commitment for that is completely casual. It's usually super intensive, disrupts family life, disrupts your leisure time, and pretty much everything else. All right, guys, that is it for the news on this Saturday. Hopefully your weekend's off to a good start. As always, cheers.